Welcome. This video will walk you through the process of nominating a property for the National Register of Historic Places in Louisiana. Here we're talking specifically about the process of nominating a property. If you want to learn more about what the National Register is, what it does, and what types of properties can be nominated, please take a look at our other video, which provides an introduction. You can also find more detailed information about either video on our website at louisianahp.org and click National Register. It's also always a good idea to call our office before starting the process so we can talk through the particulars of your property. Here's a chart with a quick overview of the whole process. It starts with an evaluation of eligibility at our office, proceeds to writing the nomination, presenting it to a state review committee, and finally, sending a final nomination to the National Park Service. The National Park Service makes the final decision about whether to list a property. The first step is to complete an eligibility questionnaire form. You can find this form on our website or email us for a copy. This is what the form looks like. It's 2 pages and it's a fillable PDF form, so you can complete it on your computer and email it back to us. If you prefer to fill it out by hand, we can mail you a copy. You're welcome to attach additional sheets if you need to. And which form you use will depend on the resource type. Currently, we have a general form as well as specific forms for districts and for cemeteries. Here's a closer look at the general form. You'll begin with the resource name if it has one, its location, the resource type, which will be building, structure, site, or object. Remember, if it's a district, you'll use the district form, and if it's a cemetery, you'll use the cemetery form. Its historic and current function, so what it was used for historically and what it's used for currently, the architectural style if you know it, then criteria and area of significance. These begin to explain the importance of the resource in a way that corresponds to the National Register requirements. To help you choose, you can find information explaining the criteria on our website under eligibility. You can choose multiple criteria if they apply and up to 2 areas of significance on the form. You'll then have an opportunity to elaborate on the significance of the property. Here are some things to think about when you're describing significance. Start with a brief history of the resource. If it's significant under criterion A for a single event, describe the event and why it was important. For a broad pattern of events, like the history of education in a particular place, describe how it contributed to that history in an important way. If there are other similar resources still standing, for example, if there are 5 other schools in the city that were operating during the same historic period as this one, what makes this one stand out? For criterion B, explain the impact this person had in the chosen area of significance. Also describe how the person was connected to this property. Was it their home, their office? During what period of time did they use this property? And are there other properties associated with them that are still standing? For criterion C, describe briefly what makes the resource a good example of an architectural style, construction type, or an engineering method. How did this property contribute to the development of that style, type, or method in a particular place? Or if it's the work of a master architect, what makes this an important example of their work? Criterion D focuses on a research question. That doesn't have to be fully developed at this point, but describe what kinds of information we might be able to learn by studying this resource. Also indicate whether there has been any archaeological study of the area and whether or not artifacts are known to be present. You'll also provide some information about the age and appearance of the resource. This helps us to evaluate integrity. This will include when it was built, who built it, and a brief but complete description. Is it one building, multiple buildings? What do they look like? You'll also include information about when and how the resource has changed over time. You don't need to include minor things, but if, for example, all the windows were replaced in the 1980s, or it received an addition in the 1920s, we want to know those things. We also want to know if it's ever been moved, whether recently or historically. For the district form, you'll also provide some other information like the range of construction dates, number and types of properties within the district. You'll describe the setting and any distinctive features, whether there's been a survey of the district, and you'll also submit a map of the proposed boundaries. For cemeteries, you'll also include the number of burials, the ranges and ages of those burials, the approximate size. You'll describe the setting and any distinctive features, and include a brief biography of any significant persons who are buried in the cemetery. Current photos are important to submit with your questionnaire. Include enough to give us a good overall sense of what the resource looks like right now. If it's a building or a small group of buildings, include interior photos as well as exterior. For districts, only exterior photos are required. For resources like districts and cemeteries, it's helpful to see a few overall views and streetscapes in addition to some individual components. These items aren't required with a questionnaire, but are helpful to include if you have them. Copies of historic images or maps, floor plans or other drawings, current or historic, and period news articles or other documents. Once we review the questionnaire, if it looks like the resource meets the eligibility requirements, we'll reach out and schedule a site visit to see it in person. If we don't think it meets the requirements, we'll send a letter explaining why. It's important to note that this is a professional opinion, and you can still submit a draft nomination to us if you choose. Writing a nomination takes a good bit of time and effort, so it's important to get an idea of a resource's eligibility before you decide whether to start that process. Next, you'll receive a nomination packet that includes all of the forms that you'll need to fill out and instructions, including a manual that walks you through the entire process. We're also available to answer any questions you have along the way. Once you submit a draft, we'll review it and send back comments for corrections, revisions, and additions. It often takes a few rounds of revisions, sometimes more, before a nomination is ready to advance to the next step. Once we have a final draft, the nomination is placed on the agenda for the next meeting of the State Review Committee. Review Committee meetings are scheduled 3 times per year and are open to the public. At the meeting, you will present the nomination to the committee. They will discuss it, give an opportunity for public comment, and vote on whether to recommend to our State Historic Preservation Officer that the nomination move forward to the National Park Service. If the committee votes to advance the nomination, the form is then finalized within 90 days and forwarded to the National Park Service for a 45-day review period. The Park Service is the final decision maker for a National Register nomination. They may approve a nomination and list a resource, reject a nomination, or return it for revisions or additional information, after which it can be resubmitted. If the majority of owners of a property formally objects to a nomination that the Park Service approves, the result is a formal determination of eligibility instead of a listing. If the National Park Service approves the nomination and lists the resource, it then joins the more than 1,400 resources in Louisiana and more than 95,000 resources across the United States that help to tell the story of our state and nation. If you plan to apply for historic tax credits for a property that's not yet listed, there is another step earlier on in the process that can allow the tax credit application to move forward before the nomination process is completed. Through this process, a preliminary determination of eligibility comes from the National Park Service. Call our office for more information about this and the overall application process. You can find more details about the National Register program and the nomination process on our website, and always feel free to call or email with questions. We're here to help every step of the way.